Greetings, everybody. I'm John Chuck. I'm a family physician, and I am the Chief Wellness Officer at California North State University. It's my pleasure to be here today and to talk about restoring hope for living well. First of all, I would like to say that I am an optimist. I see the glass as half full. I'm not a naive person, but I've lived 65 years and I've seen a lot of good and bad, and I have found that it serves me well and serves the world well if I choose to focus on the positive and try to bring more light to the darkness. We have this famous Chevrolet commercial in America. I think the song goes something like baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. I'm a big fan of the United States and of the United Kingdom. And I believe there are many good things about the life that we're living. That being said, I'm also aware of current events, and I know that we all face some challenges. We're experiencing some very extreme weather worldwide, and that causes stress. Um, we're living with many chronic diseases worldwide, and that has a huge impact on people, their families, and those providing the care. Um, Maybe because of extreme weather and chronic conditions and other things, we have a lot of mental health challenges, such as anxiety and depression and thought disorders. I believe that the king of all health is mental health, and so I think about this often. We are all living in an unprecedented age of information overload. So I think that is another challenge to our wellness. And finally, I would say that before I was born, during my entire lifetime, and long after I am gone from this planet, there will always be major conflicts between different groups of people in the world. It turns out there are also some challenges to wellness specific to the anal cancer community. And thank you to my friends who shared these specific points of concern with me. Number one is emotional exhaustion and fear of recurrence. This leads to ongoing anxiety and stress even after what is thought to be definitive treatment. There is oftentimes associated loss of identity and intimacy because of body image changes, sexual dysfunction, and challenges of just getting back into the lane of normal life. Isolation and stigma. Nobody likes to feel like they're alone, and nobody likes to be have stigma. And as you all know, anal cancer is relatively rare. It's been associated with human papilloma virus, which makes it a sexually transmitted disease. And this leaves many patients and their families feeling judged and or silenced. The aftercare is oftentimes fragmented. Follow-up support and treatment issues are not always fully addressed, leaving patients stranded. And finally, as you well know, there is significant caregiver and clinician burnout. So the talk is called Restoring Hope for Living Well. So what is hope? I love this definition of hope from Frank Ostaseski, who is the founder of the Zen Hospice Project in San Francisco, California. And Mr. Ostaseski says, hope is an open, active trust in life that refuses to quit. And I just love the dynamic nature of this aspirational comment about what hope is. And hope is certainly something that is needed in the anal cancer community. Robert Frost was an outstanding poet, very good with words, and he reminds us that hope is not found in a way out, but a way through. And I think if you think about your own life and the circumstances in which you earned reality-based hope, you earned it by working through the issue, not skirting around it. I'm not a big fan of horse racing, but I was once watching a Triple Crown race here in America, and the weather was very bad. And a muddy track makes for multiple challenges for the jockeys, including visibility. So if the jockeys know that it's going to be a muddy race, they come prepared with tools. And the particular tool they use to maintain vision, clear vision, is they wear several sets of goggles. So, the horses come storming out of the starting gate. Of course, by the time they get to the quarter turn, the goggles are covered with mud. So the jockeys just pull the first set of goggles off their face, and lo and behold, they have another a set of clear goggles. They have great visibility for a little bit. Then you get to the half turn, muddy again, pull the goggles down. Same thing at the three-quarter turn, and then you race to the finish line. So I like to learn from all the things I observe in life. So I thought, gee, if jockeys know a race is going to be muddy and they come prepared with tools like this, maybe we facing our lives, knowing if it's going to be challenging, we can bring tools to the game to help us be more successful. I like thinking about life in terms of where we are and where we want to go. So I would say that where we all are right now is we're in a muddy mess and we have associated anxiety and stress. Where do we want to get? Like what gap do we want to close? We want to get to the other side where we have hope, joy, and meaning, right? So I talked about hope. What is joy? There's a book by Doug Abrams called The Book of Joy, and he wrote it after spending several days at a retreat with the late Bishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And I heard Doug Abrams speak live about his book, and he said, well, it's a pretty good book, but I know that many of you won't have time to read it. So he goes, this is what I want to share with you. He said that oftentimes you think you have joy in life when you have the absence of suffering. But he says that joy and suffering are just two sides of the same coin, and that coin is called life. So you really can't separate joy and suffering. And then meaning, the best meaning definition I've ever heard of meaning was from the great Rachel Remen, who is a pediatrician in America who has coached tens of thousands of physicians and nurses on being well. And she defines meaning as the deep satisfaction of knowing that your existence matters and that what you're doing with your life is making a positive difference in the lives of those around you and maybe the world. So how are we going to get from the left side of this diagram to the right side? I'm just going to talk about three tools we can bring to the game, just like jockeys bring goggles to a muddy race. The first one is gratitude. The second one is something called tragic optimism. And the third is investing in the relationships that matter. First, let me talk about gratitude, and I'll open with this quote from Melody Beattie. Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. What is the science of gratitude? This is a picture of Bob Emmons along with some of the books he's written. Bob is a professor of psychology at UC Davis here in Northern California. Uh, and he was the editor of the Journal of Positive Psychology. In any event, um, long ago, Bob and his research team did a landmark study in collaboration with the physiatry department at the UC Davis Medical Center. And what he did was he targeted a group of patients with progressive neurologic disease, conditions like multiple sclerosis. And his intervention was he gave them gratitude journals and a pen. And the only instructions were number one, when you wake up every morning, the first thing you do is you write down three things you're grateful for in your gratitude journal. And the second instruction is you can't write down what you wrote the day before because that's just flat out lazy, even if you have multiple sclerosis. In any event, they started the study and then they stopped the study after 21 days. Now, those of you familiar with research know that if you stop a study after 21 days, it's oftentimes because study subjects are suffering or dying. But in this case, it turned out that they stopped the study after 21 days because the findings were remarkably positive, and the p-values were so low that they could go to publication with it. So what did they find? They found that in the intervention group that was gratitude journaling, they had better health outcomes, better mood scores, and the family and friend perception of the study subjects was superior to that of the control group, which was other patients with progressive neurologic disease who were not gratitude journaling. The finding was so remarkable that Bob won a $5.8 million grant from the Templeton Foundation to scale up the study. They wanted to find out whether this positive impact of gratitude journaling was only true for patients with multiple sclerosis. Could it be true for healthy people, men, women, young, old, high socioeconomic, low socioeconomic? In any event, Bob and I live in the same town, and I see Bob frequently over the years. And whenever I run into Bob, I ask him, Bob, how's the study going? And Bob's answer is always the same. And it goes like this: John, easiest $5.8 million ever in the history of grant receiving. He goes, my graduate students and I, we have scoured the world, done this interventional study in all different cuts of society, and the results are always the same. Gratitude journaling always works. Now, Bob is a scientist. I'm just a family doctor. I'm a clinician. So when sharing Bob's amazing research finding with patients, I sort of said, it's like making the transition from waking up every day and saying, woe is me. That little picture on the left, that's how I tend to wake up every day. And making the transition from waking up and saying, woe is me, instead to waking up and saying, wow is me. You're just changing one letter at the end, an E for a W, and it's a totally different perspective and outlook on life. Now, why would you say wow is me when you wake up in the morning, given all the negative things, reality-based, true negative things going on in your life? Well, as a family physician, I would say, first of all, you should be grateful that you just woke up. There are so many ways that you can go to bed looking and feeling totally normal and die in your sleep. And many of you on this conference know what they are. Things like massive heart attacks, intracranial bleeds, homicide, who knows? So many ways. So I heartily encourage you every day, instead of waking up and saying, woe is me, wake up and say, wow is me. Think of things you're grateful for, and it will change your health outcomes, your mood, and people will like you more. And who doesn't want that? Next, I want to talk about tragic optimism. This is a picture of Viktor Frankl. He was a European physician who was rounded up by Hitler and put in a death camp. And he survived the death camps. And when he came through that experience, he learned many things and he wanted to share those learnings. So he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's the number one book recommended by American therapists to the patients they're treating because it's all about responding to your difficult circumstances by making good choices that improve the outcome of your life. So this is a quote from Viktor Frankl. He said, "The world is in a bad state, but everything will become still worse unless each of us does his best." So this is called tragic optimism, and tragic optimism is your bridge to reality-based hope, joy, and meaning. This is a picture of Wayne Thiebaud, who is a famous American artist. Wayne Thiebaud said, "As far as I'm concerned, there is only one study, and that is the way in which things relate to one another." So speaking of relationships, Richard Swenson, a family physician, wrote a wonderful book called Restoring Margin to Overloaded Lives. Wouldn't that title alone make you buy this book? It's one of the five best books I've ever read in my entire life. So what Dr. Swenson said is that, he led a very simple life, primary care doctor, not a fancy subspecialist. And he said, over the decades, I have observed that most of my patients are unhappy. And they're unhappy because they're looking for happiness in material things, income, job titles, a certain type of car. And he says his observation from looking at his patients who are unhappy and happy is that people find authentic happiness not in things, but in relationships. And he said you have three types of relationships. You have the relationships with other people, which is called your social life. You have a relationship with yourself, which is called your emotional life, rooted largely in your self story about yourself. And lastly, he said you have a relationship with the transcendent, and that is called your spiritual life. So I want to now make some comments about each one of these types of relationships we have in our lives. The first one is our social relationships. So this is a picture of Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General of the United States twice, and I heard him speak live, and this is a screenshot of our video recording of it. Dr. Murthy said, "We are all going to have moments of doubt. I have them. I have them. I'm sure you have them. Or that we wonder if we're actually enough, if we're the right person to do the job and get it done." And what does he say we need to do in those moments? He says, and it's in those moments that we need to reaffirm each other. So reaffirm is a transitive verb, and transitive verbs demand objects. So if, for example, he said, and it's in those moments that we need to reaffirm, period, that would be a meaningless sentence. What he wants to make it very clear that in our lives, when we're facing our greatest challenges, as are many of the people on this conference call, that's when we need to look around to the people who are our peer support groups and reaffirm one another. Next, I want to talk about the relationship you have with yourself and the importance of self-compassion. Brene Brown, who is a professor at the University of Houston, hugely popular on social media because she is so good about identifying the issues in life that really take us down. And she has really good suggestions for how to work our way through these challenges. So Brene Brown says we live in a vulnerable world plagued by comparison, shame, and loneliness. And one of the ways we deal with it is to numb ourselves by buying things, eating food. This is a Costco muffin, which is a very popular muffin in America. It has 690 calories, which is way too many. Drinking alcohol and taking drugs. Now, it turns out that currently in America, 1 out of 5 adults is taking a psychotropic medication. I think this can be very beneficial. As a family physician, I prescribe many of these medicines. I've had intimate family members take these medicines to great benefit. But what does it say about the world we're living in that 1 in 5 of us needs to take a medication to feel well and to do well? So Brene Brown, what I like about her is that she doesn't just point out the challenges we face, she offers alternative solutions. So she offers this alternative solution called wholehearted living. And it starts with a position of self-worth. She recommends you wake up every morning, and after you say, wow is me, you say to yourself, my best efforts today will be enough. And then here's the thing. You go off to work or you start your day caring for your family members, and you get all beat up all day long. But then she says, after you come home and sit down to a nice dinner, you go to bed believing, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. So I want to lead us now in a wonderful self-affirmation exercise. It's a vegan self-affirmation exercise, which should have very broad appeal. This is a picture of an avocado looking into a mirror at a Motel 6 in the United States, and it's saying to itself, you're fat, but you're a good fat. All right. So no matter where you are in the world right now, I want you to get comfortable in your chair or wherever you're standing, and I want you to wrap your arms around you in a warm embrace. And I want you to twist side to side and repeat after me and saying this, I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, and gosh darn it, I like myself. Let's do that one more time. I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, and gosh darn it, I like myself. I know you're laughing, you're giggling, but I tell you, this really works. I do it regularly. Okay, next I want to talk about the relationships that we have with the transcendent. So there is an American anthropologist at the University of Chicago, Professor Richard Schweder, and he writes about the 3 domains of ethics and values. First, there's the domain of autonomy, in which people are first and foremost. And this is very much where America lies, or actually, we might lie to the left. And some people call us hyper individualist. The second domain is that of community, in which people are individuals, but they see themselves more as part of a larger community. And when I think of the domain of community, I think of the country of Japan. Lastly, there's the domain of divinity, in which people are individuals and they are part of communities, but they're mostly just inhabiting these earthly bodies, serving an all-knowing, all-loving greater being. Um, Next, I want to talk about the job experience I had between high school and college, and then we'll come back to these 3 domains. So I worked at a Benjamin Moore paint store, and I knew nothing about paint. But the owner said, "Well, when the customers come in, all you have to tell them is that at Benjamin Moore we sell 3 types of paint. We sell good paint, better paint, and best paint. We don't sell bad paint. If you want bad paint, you just go down the block and you buy Kelly Moore paint." So in any event, if I might have the liberty of applying this good, better, best scheme to the domains of ethics and values, I would say that the domain of autonomy is good. I like autonomy, it's a good thing. But the domain of ethics and values that emphasizes community is better, and the domain that emphasizes divinity is best. And I want to share a story with you that brings this hierarchy to mind. So this is a story of the 3 Masons, and let's say that they are building a new hospital in London. So a traveler comes upon these 3 Masons building this hospital, and he notices that the first Mason is angry. And the traveler asks this Mason, "Well, what are you doing?" And the Mason replies, "Can't you tell? I'm just turning rocks into blocks." The second Mason is smiling, and the traveler asks him, "What are you doing?" And that Mason says, "I'm providing for my family." The third Mason is radiant. And his response to the same question is, I am building a hospital that people and their families will come to for decades, maybe centuries, to find hope and healing during the most difficult moments of their lives. So the angry Mason, he has a job. The smiling Mason, he has a career. And the radiant Mason, he's answering his calling. Now, what is the ceiling of the human experience for the angry Mason who has a job? It's happiness. What is the ceiling for a smiling Mason who sees his work as a career? He can have joy. And finally, what is the ceiling of the human experience for the radiant Mason who's answering a calling? He can claim bliss. And don't we all want bliss? Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to close with these final thoughts. The first is that you are not alone. As a patient, as a caregiver, as a provider, I know that sometimes you can feel alone, and it's a very isolating feeling, but you are not alone. You're part of a patient community. You're part of a family support community. You're part of a caregiving community. And as Dr. Murthy said, in your most difficult moments of imposter syndrome or stress or anxiety, please, please, please reach out to those around you for mutual support. Secondly, there is power in that mutual support and in self-compassion and in answering your calling in life. And finally, this quote from Anne Lamott, hope begins in the dark, the stubborn hope that if you just show up and try and do the right thing, the dawn will come. And let me reassure you, the dawn will come. This is my contact information. I'd love to hear from you. johnchuck1@gmail.com, or my cell is 530-919-9705. If you do email me or text me, please remind me who you are. And finally, I wrote a book called Pearls from the Practice of Life, a family physician's guide to help you struggle less and thrive more. And if you'd like to read about or hear more about some of the things we've talked about today, you can find this book on Amazon. All right. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to share this message with you, and enjoy the rest of the conference.